We'll now call to order the February 1st, 2024 meeting of the Santa Barbara Local Agency Formation Commission. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Freeman,
Here.
Commissioner Geyer,
Here.
Commissioner Hartman,
Here.
Commissioner Kiriakou,
Here.
Commissioner Nelson,
Here.
Commissioner Osborne,
Here.
Commissioner Patino,
Here.
Commissioner Richardson,
Here.
Commissioner Stark,
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here. Yeah, somebody can just check on that audio. Thank you so much. If you would please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Next item of business is the approval of minutes from the January 11th, 2024 meeting. I would entertain a motion on that.
Move approval.
Motion by Hartman, second by Geyer. May call the. No, we don't. We don't have to do a roll call vote. It says roll call vote on my thing, which is why. Is there any public comment on that?
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, we have no request to speak.
Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion passes.
And I will abstain.
Okay. If a voting member abstains, does that cause an alternate to vote or not? No. Thank you so much. All right. The next item of business is administering the oath of office to our reappointed city members, Commissioners Janelle Osborne and James Kiriakou. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak from the public?
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, we have no request to speak on this item.
Thank you. And will you please administer the oath of office to our new commissioners? Thank you. Now is the time for members of the public to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak on items not on the agenda?
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, we have no request to speak under general public comment.
All right. That concludes public comment. Now moving on to the approval of the consent calendar. Are there any items people wish to pull? Seeing none. Are there any comments or is there any public comment?
Chair Freeman, we have no request to speak on this item.
Thank you so much. I would entertain a motion for
Move
approval.
approval. Second.
Motion by Hartman, second by,
Bettina.
I'm sorry, Bettina. I know everyone's first name, and I'm like trying to force myself to use everyone's last name. And so, moving on to a vote, all in favor say aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Hearing none, motion passes. Next item of business is business item number 1. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, business item number 1 is selection of vice chair for 2024.
Thank you. Mike?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners. So this is a follow-up item from our January meeting where we elected to postpone the appointment of our vice chair until after the selection committee had made their choice on their membership for city members. That has occurred, as you just witnessed. Both Commissioner Kiriako and Commissioner Osborne have swapped roles. So James is now the regular member and Janelle's now the alternate member on the city selection committee. We have another item that kind of will go into that. So now that that has been done, it's free for nominations and votes on who we'd like to see as a vice chair. And traditionally, it's the city membership that is going to take that role.
Thank you. Are there any comments on this or questions from the commission?
If we're ready for a motion, I'm happy to make one. If we need discussion, I'm happy to wait for it.
I think we currently have it scheduled to come after public comment, but we'll see if
I can.
there are any other comments from the commission.
I can wait.
Okay. Being none, any public comments?
Chair Freeman, we have no request to speak on this item.
I will now entertain this motion.
Well, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Patino.
Second.
Wow. Okay.
okay.
I was about to say nice things, but since we already have a motion on the floor, for purposes of discussion, she served the commission with distinction. She attends regularly. Have a lot of admiration and respect for her, and I think it would be nice to have a North County representative be vice chair since we currently have a South County chair.
Okay, great. Motion by Kiriako. I think I'm going to move second to Hartman. And yeah, moving on to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion passes. Okay. Congratulations. Next item is business item number 2. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, business item number 2 is for the commission to consider execution of an agreement with County of Santa Barbara for appointment of county counsel to serve as legal counsel to the commission pursuant to Government Code Section 56384B to be effective when executed by the county, scheduled for February 13th, 2024.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prater.
Okay, we will have our legal counsel, Mr. Dillon, give a presentation on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for the appointment of legal counsel for Lafco pursuant to Government Code Section 56384B. We have been in discussions, as you all know, with County Council for them to resume the position they held until about 2018. Those discussions have been very good, very smooth, and we've drafted an agreement for your consideration that's been through County Council's review and my review. I was the principal author of the agreement. So I think everything is in order. Their board, the Board of Supervisors, won't consider this till February 13th, 2024. So the advantage of that, it's not as long as I was hoping for, but we'll have at least a 2-week overlap between my tenure as your counsel and them being under the attorney-client privilege status. So we'll have a transition period there where we can candidly talk and have a smooth transition. So I think everything's in order. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them. Otherwise, I think you're ready to move forward.
Thank you so much. Kiriako?
Thank you, Chair. Just one question. There will be times where different jurisdictions come to a place of disagreement, whether it's cities amongst themselves or counties, special districts, et cetera. The County of Santa Barbara is not a disinterested actor in some land use decisions that come before this body. Can we just briefly discuss what Lafco staff's position is on how potential conflicts would be managed in those instances?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Kiriako, I know from my own experience, having worked at County Council for over 30 years, that there are several different agencies they represent in addition to the County of Santa Barbara. So dealing with potential conflicts of interest is not a new issue for an office. The office is a large office. It's now up to 35 members. Historically, it was in the mid-20s, but it's gone up to 35. And they have managed potential conflicts in the past by appointing a particular counsel to represent the independent special agency, who will then have an ethical wall between them and anyone who might be representing county interests that would potentially conflict with those of Lafco. And that's been a very successful process. I think in the last instance, if for some reason Lafco was uncomfortable with that and wanted to bring in your own counsel, I don't think county council would bat an eye about, cooperating with that. But it's a long process. It's been in place for many years. It's done in other county council offices throughout the state. It's well recognized. And the other thing I know is that if there's a potential county council conflict of interest, they will not want to touch it. They will want to get out of that position and make sure that there's no questions about ethics. So I think you'll be well served.
Thank you very much. I have no more questions.
One question that I have is whether we will have somebody from county council at our meetings, or if we will, going forward, not have the legal person that we usually are used to able to look over at.
The practice is they will send somebody to the meetings. Keep in mind, until about 5 years ago, I was showing up because I was with county council, I was not your attorney directly. And but one of the advantages is that when someone is missing, has a conflict, like I think I went on a couple of trips during those years. I remember Mike Gazzoni coming up here and sitting with Lafco. He was the then county council. This agency, its role in planning and annexations and corporations is taken very seriously by the office. So I think you'll have a lawyer here at all times.
Thank you so much. I see you start to Stark, yes.
I have a very simple question. My understanding is that the attorney-client relationship between Lafco and the county council's office begins when the board approves it. It doesn't exist until that period of time. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thanks.
Any other commissioner comments? Oh, Guyer.
Yes. Did we have a recommendation from the ad hoc committee?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We did have a recommendation from the ad hoc committee, and their recommendation was to pursue an agreement with county council's office.
Great. Is there any public comment on this item?
Chair Freeman, we have no request to speak on this item.
Thank you. Is there, I would then entertain a motion.
I move we approve execution of the agreement after it's finalized, or now, and then it'll be finalized by the board. I'll second that.
Motion by Hartman, second by Patino. Moving on to a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. Motion passes. I didn't technically say aye, I forgot. Aye. Our next item of business is business item number 3. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, business item number 3 is to consider recommendations regarding a work program for parks and recreation, open space, library and facility rental, municipal service, and sphere review, and to approve the proposed outline and schedule.
Thank you so much. Mr. Prater.
Thank you, Chair. We will get a PowerPoint up and running here. But essentially, this municipal service review aligns with the work program that was adopted by the Commission in January to continue to pursue our service reviews, studying agencies that have to deal with the next service level in the series. And so the service review will cover the 18 agencies that are included in this particular round. We will look at the various comprehensive services that they provide. We have a proposed outline that matches the outlines that we had been using previously. We should open up to public comment in case there's any questions there, and we're happy to answer any questions at the staff level. If we harken back a few years ago, we started out this process looking at our public safety MSR, which covered fire and police and emergency services. That looked at a number of agencies, 13 agencies. We've written that report. We've approved that report. Then we moved on to the next year, which covered water and wastewater and stormwater services. That was a bigger undertaking. It included 33 different agencies. We've just recently, in January, approved our transportation-related MSR that covered a myriad of services, including parking, street sweeping, street lighting, transit, airport, and street beautification. And so we are now embarking on our fourth series of MSRs that covers parks, open space, libraries, and facility rentals. And this includes the listed 18 agencies that are up on the overhead here. On the heels of this one, we will do one final service review that then looks at all the other services that we may have missed or didn't fit neatly into one of those categories, and we'll kind of write a generic covering all of those different services and any agency that we may have missed along the way. So again, it collectively it analyzes these 18 different agencies. It's going to look at their ongoing operations. It's going to look at their finances. It's going to look at the governance and their principal act of what authorities they have. Look at their latent powers. We'll look at their ability to provide those specific services that they are deemed to have the authority to provide. And then we'll look at their sort of their importance in the area and whether or not, you know, they need to remain, whether or not we can consolidate or do any other sort of analysis in that sense. We'll look at different study areas for any of these agencies that may include additional land that may be valuable to be added to their service capability based on their performance. And lastly, we'll write the determinations that are required by state law while we do this analysis. So again, the proposed outline, very similar pattern. We'd like to be consistent at least for the first 5 series so that everything has the same look and feel, and the readers can understand where to find the information consistently throughout. At the end of that 5 years, if we feel there's a better platform or format, we may adapt to that as well. But we'll bring that particular format when it comes forward. But for now, we're going to stick with this format, which includes an executive summary, some key findings that we find on a county-wide basis of what these services entail. Chapter 1 will do the service review and its determinations. Chapter 2 will look at the sphere of influence and make determinations for that. We'll make a recommendation ultimately for those agencies that are either singly providing that service that we're studying under this service review, or if we've done previous service reviews and we've wrapping up all of the services by that agency, we'll make a recommendation for that sphere boundary. Or agencies that still fit in that other category that we still yet need to write, we'll hold off on a final recommendation for a sphere of influence for them. That includes the 8 cities and any other additional agencies that haven't been evaluated. And we'll make the final determination for those spheres at the conclusion of that 5th service review. And then lastly, we'll do an acknowledges all the preparers in assisting us in writing that and how it relates to the prior 4 service reviews and the prior 20-year history of service reviews that the Commission has undertaken. So next steps is we have attached to this report a survey questionnaire that we will send out to the 18 agencies, sort of asking for data, gathering information, kind of key pertinent information that would be beneficial to us as we begin to write service review. That response deadline is April 8th, so we're giving them a couple of months to go through that and provide some responses to that, give them time to bring it to their boards or councils if they wish to do so. Then staff will take all of that information. We'll craft an administrative draft sometime in late summer. We'll present that administrative draft back to the staffs of those 18 agencies. They will critique that, provide edits and comments. We'll work with them between our staff and their staff to refine that draft. And then we'll get ultimately to a release for everybody to comment on. Again, the agencies can comment on that again if they happen to miss something or didn't have enough time to review. The general public will have a chance to comment on that. Our commissioners will have a chance to comment on that. Then we'll produce a final draft for an adoption, hopefully sometime at the end of this year in December, as our traditional pattern is. So with that, the recommendation is to accept this outline, this scope, and this schedule for the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, Library, and Rental Facility MSR and Sphere review. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer any.
And thank you so much. Opening up to questions from the commission, beginning with Commissioner Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If an agency has multiple different services, do they all then have the same service area? Is there ever an instance where you've got one agency, but they've got a different boundary for different services that they offer? Just curious.
That's a good question. Commissioner Hartman, through the chair, in our scenario, the service boundary for all of our districts match the service capability of what they can provide. But for special districts, that's not necessarily has to be the case. So a special district could decide to activate a power, like weed abatement or garbage pickup, and they can limit the area within their boundary of where they're going to provide that service. It just so happens to be that the services that all of our districts are providing match their exterior limits of their service.
So all the services overlap
So
in an area.
They could overlap, yeah, right.
Thank you, Commissioner Stark.
Yes. I have a sort of a specific question and a general question. My specific question is, am I correct that the fact that you're doing an ongoing service review the way you propose to do it, is that prejudice anybody from coming in for a petition for a sphere of influence change on any individual project?
Commissioner Stark, through the chair, that does not. The opportunity for any agency or individual landowner can petition or file a resolution of application to change their sphere boundary at any time, and that would be an application process. So what we're doing is presenting an opportunity to change boundaries while we're doing a service review, if they're applicable. So it's a second bite at the apple if they would like.
Thanks.
Process.
Thank you. So my general question is, I'd like to know a bit about how you intend to approach libraries, which are kind of structured differently than any other sort of government service. Can you give us an idea of that?
Yeah, fortunately, I think the county has recently gone through a library study and have a lot of documentation on that. So I think we're going to tear off of that report and evaluation. But there are certain cities that have areas that they're serving outside of their city limits as far as an adjunct library service. So we're going to document those. We're going to identify whether or not there's some additional areas that could be picked up and used for that type of service. We will look at whether or not there's an opportunity for more mobile library opportunities as well. And ultimately kind of document just what exists on the ground, who provides that type of service, who are they partnering or doing collaboration with, and are there better governance structure models that are out there that would fit the needs of the community.
And am I correct that the result of all of this may or may not be a change in the spheres of influence of one or more agencies?
Right. So at the end of the day, that's what we're here to make a decision on, is where is the boundary for these agencies given the service they're providing, and whether or not they can expand that service in some new area. And if it makes sense to do so, then the recommendation often becomes they should expand their sphere of influence so that they can ultimately apply for an annexation or a change of organization so that they can actually provide that service. Just changing the sphere boundary does not allow them to provide that service. It just is a precursor to the service being provided through the formal annexation process.
Last question, if you don't mind. Am I also correct in assuming that with respect to a special district, the fact that you're doing any of this doesn't change that question of a latent power decision if one should arise?
Correct. Again, the service review will document the service powers that they do exist and the latent powers that exist within those special districts. um, defining whether or not to activate that power has to come through an actual application to LAFCO.
Thank you.
Commissioner Geyer.
Well, mine isn't a question. Mine is a comment. I've up for re-election, and I've gone out and visited 20 districts so far, and I am amazed at districts that have no website. Found one district that doesn't even have a landline. So I'm really impressed by the work you're doing and the challenges it must be to try to get some of this information. Thank you.
Commissioner Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Freeman. I see the county CSAs are involved, but there's some areas that aren't covered by CSAs that provide potentially these services. There's a lot of unincorporated area communities that don't necessarily have a CSD or not covered by a CSA. Is it appropriate to study the balance of that as well?
Yeah, Commissioner Nelson through the chair. And so the way we've been addressing that is identifying those areas that are in unincorporated territory as study areas. And then that's the nexus in which we will do the analysis about what's the makeup of those areas. Could it be served by the adjacent CSA or CSD or whatever the scenario may be, and come to some sort of conclusion and ultimately make some kind of recommendation. So that's the nexus as to how we think service boundaries should grow for these special districts.
Okay, so we would potentially look at other municipalities, CSDs that are in that area, and maybe say that they might need to add powers, or is that what?
Yeah, exactly.
Suggest?
Right. So yeah. So common one is we're looking at CSA 11. So it's very sporadic. It's sort of hit and miss throughout the South kind of county area. So whether or not that CSA should expand and provide whatever services they provide. Now they provide a variety of services from recreation and parks type of services to street maintenance. We already did the street review. But this is an opportunity. Just because we did the transportation MSR doesn't mean we will not go back and revisit those types of services. So if something new has surfaced between our study of CSA 11 or any of the CSAs that we studied that we're going to restudy, there's an opportunity to go back and polish up and refine and do supplemental work in the areas that we've already touched. And that's what I kind of like about this approach that we're taking is we're not saying we've made that decision and we're not going to look back. We will reopen all of the service capabilities of any of the districts that we're looking at if new information comes to light. And it makes sense that we can study a new area and that there's a new service boundary or sphere boundary that we can adhere to that makes sense for them to capture as far as a service provider.
Thank you, Director Pear. That feeds into my other question. It's a conversation you and I have been having for some time, and the Commission knows that I've been trying to wrestle with this orchid issue and the sphere of influence the city of Santa Maria has on there, and where do we have that conversation? And Director Pear had said that today might be a chance that could be an area that was looked at part of this MSR. Is that correct, Director?
Yeah, that is correct. So we are studying the city of Santa Maria. Their existing sphere does cover ORCUT, and we can make a component of that a special study area and try to provide some detailed analysis within ORCUT about whether or not the city should or could or wants to continue to make that part of their sphere of influence.
And my goal all along with this is to provoke a discussion, because there's not a discussion there, and I've been trying to find a way to do that. And I think this is the best way to do that, to include ORCUT as a study area as part of this MSR. I'm just an alternate, so I can't make that motion, but I would ask that the Commission in general maybe include that in the motion and when you direct staff.
Maybe Mr. Prater would like to comment further on the ramifications of if we were to make that a study area, that would affect anything else that you're planning with relation to that region.
I think the observation is we can certainly make that a study area and try to provide some inventory kind of data analysis regarding that. The kind of conversations that Commissioner Nelson and I have had is identifying whether or not there's another service provider that could potentially be more useful or equally beneficial to the community of Orcutt, such as Laguna County Sanitation or some other county service area, or perhaps a new entity all in itself, like a CSD or a brand new county service area that might identify different aspects of powers that the community might see as a benefit to them. So we can certainly shed some additional light in that area, in that subject. It will be likely limited to some extent, only because of the amount of information that we're going to be able to garner from that. And I don't know if we'll have the breadth of knowledge that we can necessarily make a final conclusion about whether a CSD is a viable option or not, but it's certainly something that we can at least touch upon within the report. That might lead to further discussions down the road as things come about. But largely, as the Commission is aware, you've also directed us to embark on a memorandum of agreement program. And the memorandum of agreement program is guided for cities and the county to collaborate, to come together and start these same discussions about ultimately where should the sphere of influence be for those cities. And at the end analysis, regardless of what we write about in the service review and the recommendations that come out of that from your executive officer, the MOA, if adopted by the Commission, will be the defined boundary for those cities, right? That's the ultimate goal, is to use that process to get consensus from both city and county as to where that boundary should reside. And then LAFCO either accepts that, and if you do accept that, then that MOA is in effect, and all of the standards and provisions and processes that will be written within that document will be applicable to those cities. If the Commission does not have to accept that MOA boundary, and you can deviate and say, no, we think your boundary should be something different, then all of those provisions that have been worked out and ironed out between county and city staff and ultimately adopted by Board of Supervisors and city councils become null and void, right? Nobody has to be subject to that MOA at that point because LAFCO chose a different boundary than what was identified in the MOA. So those are the comments I would make about that. I think both have merit. We certainly can provide some information and data within the service review, but the goal from my perspective is to use the MOA process to ultimately define where all 8 city spheres of influence should be, because I think that will get at meeting the needs of both city and county as they collaboratively work together, identifying journal plan policies that mirror that of what LAFCO wants to see.
Is it therefore required to have a study area in order to deal with Orchid?
Repeat that question again.
Is it therefore required to have a study area in order to figure out what to do with Orchid, or?
No, we're not required to have a study area for that purpose.
Okay.
But we can certainly provide some data in and around Orcutt about how many parcels exist, what's the makeup of the land uses, how many potential registered voters there might be. And that type of data could lean to further discussions down the road as to whether or not a CSD might be viable, whether or not there's enough financial wherewithal to become an entity, a new public entity, things of that nature. And so that could be some benefit out of the outcome of this particular MSR.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Hartman.
Could the two processes work in tandem?
Yes.
And we really didn't highlight that on today's agenda. Is there any benefit in publicizing that as a specific item for discussion at a future meeting, or do you feel like the kind of information you would be gathering is information you could get from the voter rolls or from the from existing documents?
Yeah, I think that the latter is more akin to what I'm thinking, where whatever data we can find that evolves around a particular defined study area boundary. And I think the boundary that Commissioner Nelson and I have been kind of kicking around is basically Laguna County Sanitation covers much of southern Orcutt and southern Santa Maria Orcutt area, plus a broader boundary. But the city's sphere of influence only covers a portion of that Laguna County sanitation. So I think where those two overlap would be the identified study area. And from there, we would have a defined boundary in which to gather basic raw data about.
And one other question on a different topic, if you would remind me, so if we expand the sphere of influence for an agency and then we anticipate an annexation, does that then lead to the protest process? Is that, what happens for the annexation to occur? What's required?
Yeah, so each annexation has its own threshold of whether or not a protest process occurs or not. And so as you note, when we go through these annexations, we inform the commission as part of your action whether or not there is a number of registered voters that trip that threshold, right, as designated inhabited or uninhabited. So for all uninhabited, that's less than 12 registered voters, there would be no protest. They would waive their right to a protest. Oftentimes, when it's over that threshold, if we do not receive 100% signatures from all of the parties involved, that would be part of that annexation, we would be bound by a protest process.
And that's what determines how people are taxed or not, or they agree
Yeah.
to the new service and whether they're willing to pay for it.
Right, so as part of those annexations, there is a property tax negotiation that goes on. That negotiation agreement goes into effect when the annexation is approved and recorded and sent off to the state. So that's when that mechanism of the funding becomes real for those property owners. And in an application of that nature, if there's greater than 12 registered voters, then they would be informed of what that tax exchange would be, and they can decide to protest or not on that particular action.
Commissioner Stark.
Yes. I'm a little fuddled, if not actually befuddled, if I understand correct. The action that is before us today is to approve the process for the latest phase of the SO sphere of influence and municipal service review process, correct?
Correct.
I suppose at some additional time you're going to present to the commission your proposal for proceeding with the memorandum of agreement process. Is that also correct?
We presented that as part of our January meeting, and the commission approved to move forward with that process.
So there is a process in place for that, and then there is this. Am I also correct that at pretty much any time the commission can authorize a study of some particular special study that's a defined term of art, I think, in
Correct.
Knox Cartate? We can do that,
You can do that.
all independent of each other.
Correct.
Is that correct? I'm less fuddled. Thank you.
Commissioner Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Freeman. The reason why I brought it up was because it was Director Prater said this would be the appropriate time to bring that up. We talked about the MOA process versus the MSR, and what got it right in my head is the MOA is the political policy side, MSR is the technical side. And so there's some technical questions out there that we don't have answered about delivering services to this overlapping area. And so that's what I'm hoping to flesh out through including that as a study area in this. So that helps the commission understand. I understand there won't be any policy necessarily made by that. It's going to happen through the MOA side, but there is some technical questions that we have not asked or had answered. And that's what I was hoping that, based on the direction from Mr. Prater, that we'd be able to potentially answer here.
Commissioner Stark.
Yeah, if I might, that makes absolute sense to get the information before you make the policy decisions, so that whatever we can do to facilitate that seems like a logical thing to do.
Thank you. So the thing that I guess I'm confused about with relation to that is it seems to me as if, and I might just be misunderstanding this, that defining a study area at this time would essentially be begging the question of defining the boundaries relating to ORCID, and that I would have thought maybe that the process of a recommendation that maybe there should be a CSD or there should be some other agency would be kind of the output of a study area for that entire combined area, saying that the services that are within this very large box should really be divided up into a few smaller components, and there maybe should be a new district that should be placed here, as opposed to saying that we should actively, before we do that, say that that's a study area. So that's kind of where I'm a little bit confused about this. But
Chicken or the egg for me, as an answer in response to that, either can come first. Traditionally, what we have done is identified a study area, and that has either came from the commission to specifically ask for an area to be studied, as we did in the San Ynez Los Olivos area, when we were looking at water and wastewater. You specifically asked that, we look at Ballard and some other areas, like, hey, what could happen with those. Others have come from our research into some services and conversations that we've had with either districts or individuals and property owners that said, hey, I would like my property to be evaluated and put into a sphere because I'm contemplating something, a future annexation or service that I might need. And as executive officer, I've instituted those as study areas. So it can kind of come in any form or format, the ultimate goal here is to define where do we think adequate service needs to be given the service entity that we're looking at and those types of services. So that's more important to me than whether or not it all comes from the broad discretion of the commission or staff as we see fit.
thank you so much for that clarification. And for what it's worth, I'll say that we've already had discussions just a couple of years ago where there were people who were in the audience who were very passionate about issues relating specifically to ORCID. And so I could at least see the value in trying to define what would work well for that particular community. So I don't know where other people, however, are standing on that. Commissioner Stark.
Well, I guess if there's no public comment, I don't know if there's any public comment on this. I'm content to move forward as staff recommends, with the understanding we have the flexibility to proceed on studies as deemed appropriate and necessary, come back to the commission.
Thank you for that feedback. Before we move to public comment, I have something that occurred to me because of a question that Commissioner Stark had asked earlier relating to libraries. There's a question, maybe we really focus on the question that's being asked under inventory. Please indicate library name, location, and size in square feet. Book mobile vehicles, ? And I was just thinking from the perspective of some of the agencies that I've dealt with, that either have library services or contracting for library services, that many of them might be in a position of wondering, well, is it that I'm saying that this is the library that my agency is providing, or is it the library that is being provided by a nearby agency? So, for example, if you're in one of the cities, like maybe the city of Buellton, and they'd be listing, should they be listing their libraries, or listing that they're getting that library service from other cities? And because of the complexity that was mentioned with relation to the library zones, it feels like this question is going to end up with a lot of questions back from agencies about what exactly are you asking?
Yeah, and we have seen some of that throughout our survey, whether or not we are specifically asking for them. Ideally, we're asking whether it's something you provide from your agency. However, if you do note that somebody else provides it within your boundary, as long as you notate that the actual service is being provided by another city or another entity, that's good to know, because that city or entity may not have filled out their form to inform us. And if Buellton says, hey, City of Goleta is providing a library service in our city, and for some reason City of Goleta neglected to mention that in their portion of the survey, then that at least gets caught by us, right? So then we can go back and say, oh, hey, Goleta, Buellton said that you're providing some service in their city. is that in fact true? What kind of service is it? So it allows us to do much more follow-up and thorough review of what actual arrangements are being occurred. So we'll take it in either format, but ideally we're looking for your agency, what it is that you provide.
Thank you so very much. Are there any other commissioner questions? Moving on to public comment.
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, we have no request to speak on this item.
Thank you so much. Moving back to the commission, maybe we'd entertain a motion with or without this potential of the orchid study area question.
I'll move option 1 as amended.
Second.
Motion by Kiriakos, second by Hartman, and as amended, we mean the motion, the amendment by Nelson for the study area. Okay, thank you so much. Moving on to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Moving on to our next item is information item number 1. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Freeman and members of the commission, information item number 1 is to receive and file a report on pending commissioner special district elections and city appointments.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prater.
Thank you, Chair. So I will jump to the second half of our report, which we already let out of the cat out of the bag, which was the city appointments. Both our members swapped seats, and so we now have those seats filled for the next 4 years until 2028. So that's good for us to have some consistency there. As far as the special district election, that is underway. We had 2 seats come due, both one held by Commissioner Geyer and the other one held by alternate Commissioner Allen, who stepped down. So that seat became vacant. And Mr. Geyer and 2 other individuals are in the race for the regular commission seat. So there's 3 members that are vying for that position. That ballot has been asked to be sent back by February 19th. And the requirement to get a quorum so that once we tally the votes and they all mean something is the threshold is 20 votes. We currently are sitting at 21 votes. So we've met our quorum. So we're now going to allow any remaining special districts to cast their final vote by the 19th. And then we will tally that and bring back at our next commission meeting the results of that vote cast. And then we will seat our commissioners that may be new or returning.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Nelson?
Yes, thank you, Chair Freeman. I was just curious on the other 2 candidates, as well as does second place get the alternate position? Is that how that works in the voting process?
No, so the voting process works, you had to either file for whether you wanted to be a regular member or an alternate member. And we had one individual that requested to seat on both. And so if that individual does not win the vote on the regular member, he will be automatically seated as the alternate member.
Commissioner Hartman?
Oh, the candidates. The 3 candidates is Commissioner Geyer. We have Doreen Johnson from Montecito Sanitary District, and we have Jorge Magna from Mission Hills CSD.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Hartman? That was your question. One question, I guess, follow up on that I have. I don't know if this is something that is public information, but do we know which of the, or are we allowed to know which of the candidates is the one that filed as both the voting and alternate?
I think you can know that. So the commissioner from Mission Hills CSD filed under both.
Thank you so much. Are there any other commissioner questions? Okay, seeing none, is there any public comment on this item?
Chair Freeman, we have no request to speak on this item.
Thank you so much. Is listed as no motion needed information item. So we'll move on to the next item, information item number 2. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
And Chair Freeman, information item number 2 is to receive and file a report on the Lafco Legislative Committee meetings held on January 12, 2024.
Thank you so much. Mr. Prater.
Thank you, Chair. So Lafco currently is tracking about a dozen bills. in various stages. This is kind of the early start to the bill process. Most of those bills are kind of in a watch state from Cal Lafco. They kind of run the gamut. There's a lot of carryover bills on open meeting laws and things of that nature. Some housing bills, and some water-related districts that have been working their way through the legislation. But what's most interesting, I think, for those that don't really pay attention to Sacramento and the legislative process, is our executive director at Cal Lafco put together a pretty succinct short list of what that legislative process looks like, and kind of give you a primer of what some dates are and what things look like. So for any commissioners that are interested in the legislative process and timing of all that, I would point you to their report within the Cal Lafco packet, and there's a kind of a brief reminder of that. So that was the most meaningful for me in this. But if there's a particular bill that any of you commissioners have interest in, we can certainly try to speak upon those. If I don't have that off the top of my head, we can come back and agendize a specific bill and dig in a little deeper to any one of those. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer any.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments from the commission? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item?
Chair Freeman, we have no request to speak on this item.
Thank you so much. I believe no motion is needed on this, so moving on to the next item is commissioner announcements. Do we have any commissioner announcements or any requests for future agenda items? Commissioner Richardson.
Excuse me. Just as an aside, since Los Olivos CSD is in our purview, you might like to know that they applied to the city of Solvang for a hookup into that sewer system. City of Solvang voted Monday night to do a study to see if it would work. To Los Olivos to use City of Solvang's wastewater treatment plant. Los Olivos said that they're just exploring right now. They haven't committed anything, so that's information you might find useful.
Thank you so much. That is a fascinating update. Commissioner
Yeah, that
Williams.
is timely, Jim. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know if are there any updates on the schedule from the League of Women Voters with respect to the candidate forums?
My understanding is that the Monday night First District Forum has been canceled because we expect a big storm. And we're attempting to, in this context being the League of Women Voters, we're attempting to reschedule it. I don't know of any other First District forums that are scheduled. My understanding is that the 3rd and 4th District forums that were scheduled, I believe, by the North County League and the Lompoc Valley Association of University Women, they're going forward as far as I know. Yes, that's this evening. So that's the only information I have.
There is, however, a Monday forum for 3rd District too, so that's interesting.
All right. Thank you so much for those updates. Moving on to executive officer comments.
I have no further comments.
All right. Well, in that case, I will adjourn this meeting to the next regular meeting on March 7th, 2024, here in the County Administration Building. Thank you so much.
Jay.